Welcome everyone to my panel, Digital Wellness Strategies for Healthy Media Engagement. Woohoo! Welcome. Glad to be back. It's been 10 minutes. I know it's been so long. Oh my gosh. But if you didn't join us for the lovely opening ceremonies that we just had, this is the first panel of ConnectiVT 2024. This is a charity event benefiting the National Alliance on Mental Health, or Mental Illness, NAMI, for Mental Health Awareness Month. There you go. I'm not going to go through the entire 30-minute opening ceremony spiel, but for those who want a refresher or didn't join us for the opening ceremonies, this is the first of 3 panels in the panel series. And then afterwards, there's going to be a huge charity concert featuring 20 VTubers, including myself. So if you want to learn more about it, be sure to check the link out in the description for a link to the schedule, a link to the streams, and the donation page as well. So woohoo! Make sure you check those out if you want to learn more about ConnectiVT. If you're not familiar with who I am, hello everyone. I'll be the host of not only the event at large, but this first panel as well. My name is Rita Kamishiro. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a NAMI ambassador as well as a content creator here on the internets. That's going to be a very common theme for today, the internet. So about my work as a NAMI ambassador, if you're not familiar with the charity that we're raising funds for today, once again, just a repeat from the opening ceremonies, the organization is NAMI, the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization dedicated to building better lives for the millions of Americans affected by mental illness. And NAMI works to educate, support, advocate, listen, and lead to improve the lives of people with mental illness and their loved ones. I'll be talking a little bit more about NAMI as well in the concert during the MC section. So if you're interested in learning more, you could always tune in for that concert, or you could check out their website at nami.org. I'm also a content creator. Woohoo! And one of my biggest things as a content creator, one of my big goals is that I aim to nurture an environment of open-mindedness and positivity as well, all while I create content about things I'm really passionate about, like video games, anime, music, etc. And I hope that by being honest and open about my experiences, I can motivate and inspire you all to grow and change for yourselves and for the community as well, alongside myself, because I'm also always learning and growing. But yeah, so digital wellness. Why digital wellness? So I guess I could talk a little bit about why this topic came up. I feel like it's kind of a given as someone who is not only a content creator, but a fan as well, and someone who advocates for things online. Of course, you know, I do my work as a NAMI ambassador. And I feel like this sort of topic comes up very naturally in that regard. I think I'm always trying to find ways to improve my experience online. I feel like it's really just an amalgamation of a bunch of like random experiences here and there. Because not only have I had tough experiences, again, not only as a creator, but as a fan as well as an advocate, I've had a lot of experiences online that have been difficult to work through. And I think seeing my friends as well, who are also fellow content creators, fellow fans, seeing them go through that as well and have a difficult time working through those, I think really lit a fire under me, I guess you could say, to talk more about this topic and hopefully help others create a better environment online, not just for themselves, but for others as well. But digital wellness, if you don't know what that is, I've kind of written a random, I guess this is how I describe digital wellness. It may differ a little bit, but for today's intents and purposes, digital wellness is the intentional and balanced use of not only the internet, but digital media, social media, etc. And of course, the internet is such an integral part of our everyday life. And because it is such an integral part of our everyday life, it impacts our physical health, our mental health, and our emotional health So, by cultivating healthy habits, setting boundaries, and practicing mindfulness in how we interact with digital technology, I hope that we can foster meaningful connections and maximize the benefits of being online, maximize the benefits of digital technology while minimizing harms or whatever the opposite of benefits or detriments. mm-hmm. But yeah, the goal of today's panel is to introduce the topic of digital wellness and allow us to think about our own relationship with the internet and any basic strategies to improve our experiences online. So I hope today can act as a diving board for you all to start learning about this topic, maybe have some conversations not only with yourself, but a trusted adult or a trusted professional. And, you know, at the end of the day, have a healthier time online. So, with that being said, I'll talk a little bit about what to expect from today. Most of today is going to be me talking to you guys. I yap a lot in the positive sense, right? I talk a lot. This is something I'm very passionate about, but I would like to encourage you all to have respectful and productive conversation and chat. Of course, I'll be watching you guys. You guys can have conversations amongst yourselves, and of course, if I happen to see something in the flurry, right, I'll be sure to point it out. But I don't want to stop you guys from having conversation while I'm doing, I guess, the presenting part of the panel. And I promise, I hope it's not boring. I try to make it as interesting as possible. But this first part, that's more, I guess, lecture-y. I will be your teacher for today. We're going to start off talking about the problems and the effects these problems have on our mental health. I guess the problems with having an unbalanced relationship with the internet and digital media and what effect that has. Then we'll talk about the solutions, some strategies for not only your digital input, but your digital output as well, because being a person on the internet is a two-way street. So hopefully the solutions that we talk about will be helpful in both ways. And then we can dive into our Q&A where we'll chat. Feel free to share your experiences and discuss about the things that we've talked about. And then after that, we'll have our little wrap up. We'll give a little summary. I'll give a little summary. You can, share your takeaways, things that, you thought were relatively impactful, and some resources that I utilized when putting this together. Hopefully it'll act as further reading for you. So this will be about an hour and a half. So buckle up and let's get this party started. Woohoo! I'm so excited. I'm super excited to share this with you all. So we'll go ahead and jump right in. You're taking notes. Oh, thank you. I'm glad. This is exciting and informative for you. We'll start off with problems. So the way that I wanted to, I guess, portray these problems is by creating a loving cast, a lovely cast of characters for you all to follow today. So a little crew, if you will. I want to take a second for you all to get to know our cute little crew of internet users. And I just do want to take a second that anyone, no matter how you use the internet, can have these difficulties. But I just wanted to give a face to some of these experiences, give some names, make it fun, So without further ado, let's get to know our crew. Woohoo! So let's get to know these stories. First up, we have Frankie the Fan. Frankie the Fan, they are a dedicated member of multiple fandom communities. Like myself, and I'm sure like many of you all. So we're going to get to learn more about Frankie and some of their struggles with being online. Next up, we have Christina the Creator, another, I guess, profile that I resonate with a lot. Christina the Creator, she is a part-time content creator who makes videos about her hobbies. Wow, much like myself. And last but not least, again, another profile that I can relate to a lot is Andrew the Activist. He is a hardworking advocate looking to promote a cause that he strongly believes in. So we're going to go ahead and dive a little bit into their problems, but also some solutions for them as well. And like I said, just because a certain individual has certain problems doesn't mean that the other characters in the story don't. It's just a fun way to organize my thoughts. It really just helps me kind of organize these points. So let's dive into our first friend here. This is Frankie the fan. And look what Frankie said. Oh no, they said, I'm addicted. I'm addicted to the internet. So some of the things that they struggle a little bit is that they're not super confident socially. They're constantly comparing themselves online, and they have a little bit of trouble controlling their internet usage. These are things I can definitely relate to. So let's start with that first one, right? So Frankie doesn't feel very confident socially. They found that spending a lot of time online has really affected their social skills. And not only that, but they found that when interacting with others online, sometimes others don't really seem to understand their intentions properly. So let's dive a little bit into that. What's really interesting is I'm going to kind of give I don't want to say an anecdote. This is something I read while doing research for this topic. Have you ever noticed how babies like look at people to like figure out how to respond to things or how they should react? Well, our brains are wired to use our senses to connect with other people, right? Seeing facial expressions, hearing their tone of voice, noticing their reactions, etc. And this is different for everyone, but to some degree, for most folks, this is how we, I guess, when we're younger, we learn how to interact with folks. So it is a very complicated and ongoing learning process. That can be negatively impacted by social media, especially, for youth as well. This is a problem that could happen to anyone, but especially if you're younger and you're learning how to develop your social skills for the first time, having too much or not having enough experience developing your social skills may be extra detrimental in your formative years. If the majority of your interactions with others are coming through a screen or in messages, especially when you're young again, you may be missing out on a lot of opportunities to improve your people skills through face-to-face communication. And this isn't to say that you can't have, strong connections online. That's totally separate things. Some of my best friends I've met through online. But a lot of really important social interactions you do develop in person. So in the case of Frankie, they found that they've kind of lost a little bit of their touch, and kind of talking a little bit about how when interacting with people online, some folks don't seem to understand their intentions. A lot of nuance is lost when discussing online. In chat, somebody mentioned body language affects a lot of things, tone of voice affects a lot of things, and a lot of that can be obscured when discussing and talking online. So something to think about and again, we're just talking about problems and their effects for now. You can think about maybe if you relate to some of these, think about how it relates to your personal experience, and then after we get to know our crew, we'll talk a little bit about some solutions for these. Next, Frankie is in a lot of fan communities, in community spaces, Discord, Twitter, etc. And they find themselves constantly comparing to others in their community. To them, it seems so many fans have a lot more talents or skills than they do, seem to have so much more merchandise to show off, or always traveling to the next big convention. And it makes them feel sad. I think people often present unrealistic or adjusted images of themselves online. There's a lot of filters, both, I guess, digital filters like image correction, but also people will choose what to put out there, and they may only share their most fun, most exciting aspects of their lives, and maybe they choose to keep their struggles private, which again, they're entitled to. But keep in mind that, not everything you see out there isn't the full picture, right? There's, again, digital edits and, things people do to hide what they perceive as flaws. And constantly viewing these idealized, I guess, depictions of themselves, their lives, can lead to a feeling of competitiveness or unhappiness if we try to compare ourselves to, compare our true, genuine, full selves to these images that, again, may not be realistic or may only be a part of the full story. Yeah, exactly. Comparison is the thief of joy. You know the feeling? I feel you. Yeah, this is definitely this one specifically. I think I can definitely relate to. And last but not least, Frankie has been having some difficulty controlling their internet usage. Again, Frankie is addicted. I've definitely had my fair share of being addicted to things online. We don't need to talk about that. It's okay. I use my toolkit to manage how often I play games and watch how it's made YouTube videos. But internet addiction, if you don't know what that is, it's, I guess you could also call it, you know, problematic internet use. It's a very real concern for a lot of people. And it's something that maybe you'll fall in every once in a while, or maybe it's something that is a prolonged issue for you. And excessive time you spend online can actually lead to compulsive behaviors, of course, difficulty controlling your internet use, and almost like withdrawal symptoms from not being online. It's like an actual addiction, right? So we'll talk a little bit more about how we can combat some of the side effects of internet addiction. But that is our first friend here, Frankie. Everyone say hi and bye to Frankie as we move on to our next friend, from Frankie the fan to Christina the creator. Everyone say hi, Christina. Christina says, I'm burnt out. Oh my gosh. Christina feels isolated. She's been getting harassed and she lacks a lot of motivation. So let's dive into that first one. Christina feels isolated. Research has shown that people who spend more time on social media and less time in personal interactions with others, and again, that could be in person or, digitally. I talk to my friends on Discord all the time. Less time having personal interactions with others, they tend to have an increased risk of feeling anxious and depressed. It is a little difficult to know which came first. It's kind of like that one Jujutsu Kaisen meme where it's like, are you sad because you watch Jujutsu Kaisen, or do you watch Jujutsu Kaisen because you're sad? Is it that spending time online causes anxiety and depression, or is it that people who are depressed and anxious are more likely to be isolated or less active and spending more time on social media? Whatever the case may be, too much time online and too little time with others, I guess, again, too much time online, I guess, taking in this media and not having any meaningful connection with others, that could have a negative impact on our mental health. Christina's also has been harassed before, and I'm sure we've all encountered this before, whether you're a creator or a fan, whatever the case. I'm sure we've seen some hateful things online, and on social media it's a whole different beast. I've given this example before. Let's say you post a fun little video of you and your friends dancing to your favorite song just for fun, right? Not any other reason. Maybe all of a sudden you get made fun of because you're not doing the dance properly, or so-and-so did it better. Sometimes it can get even scarier than that. That's not to say that's not scary, but people might start attacking you for your identity, things like your race, your gender, your sexual orientation. Maybe you made a mistake. You tried to write a fun little caption, but you said something you didn't realize was wrong, and people are being very harsh to you and not letting you correct your mistakes and learn and be better. Something to keep in mind is that sometimes people behave or interact online in ways that they won't in person. This includes bullying, using offensive language or insulting language or other hurtful behaviors. And what's worse is that on this sort of behavior, when it happens in social media, it's generally viewed a lot and even shared widely. I think anger and really strong emotions tend to be what people latch onto, and it makes it difficult to reduce, that spread, or I guess the impact, because people are so quick to share it online. And we'll talk a little bit about how we can combat that again in the solutions section. And last but not least, Christina feels like she lacks motivation. Um, she feels a pressure to make things. And I've actually talked about this before. I've had a really awesome interview with actually Wonderiku about creator burnout. Um, Content creators often feel this pressure to produce high quality content to maintain engagement and interest. And, this pressure can come from like algorithm, expectations from from society, right? We live in a society. And of course, comparison with other creators. Overwork and exhaustion is very real, trying to meet those demands I just mentioned. Um, Long hours creating and editing, things like that. Creative block, again, this pressure to produce can lead to writer's block, creator's block, and that sort of blocked feeling can make the feelings of frustration and inadequacy even worse, right? You think to yourself, why is my brain not being creative? Why isn't it working? And this constant pressure can make you feel a lack of motivation. You've lost that spark, you've lost that enjoyment, you lost that passion, and it could lead you to giving up something that used to give you joy and make you happy and let you express yourself. And of course, this burnout can extend from just your time in creating, but to the rest of your life as well. You can kind of start this cycle of stress and anxiety and depression that, again, not only affects you when you're creating, but in other parts of your life as well. And of course, at the end of the day, it might make your content worse, right? Because you're burnt out. But that's Christina's problem. So let's keep an eye on that and see how we can help Christina through her problems today. Everyone say bye, Christina, and everyone say hi to Andrew. Woohoo! Again, this is Andrew, the advocate. He's saying, I'm stressed. So let's figure out why he's feeling stressed. Two things. I know, I'm so sad I didn't find a third one. I didn't want to get burnt out making this panel, so I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna stress too hard about doing the consistent 3 bullet points. So we're gonna do 2 today. Apologies, but doom scrolling. He's pretty bad at doom scrolling. That's something he does a lot. If you don't know what doom scrolling is, it's this sort of habit of scrolling and scrolling and scrolling through social media feeds, news websites, or other online platforms to consume like negative or information that's very like distressing, right? Particularly about current events, disasters, crises, and it really comes from a place of wanting to be knowledgeable, right? There's things that he's very passionate about, there's things that he cares about, and it comes from a place of wanting to be in the know and wanting to be a part of it. But doing this too much and constantly surrounding yourself with this, I guess, pressure and this stress can lead to a range of negative effects on mental health: increased anxiety and stress, heightened fear, uncertainty, and we'll talk a little bit about how you can remain involved in things that you're passionate about, but also taking care of your mental health as well. And misinformation, of course, as an advocate, Andrew does a lot of research and learning about the various causes that he's passionate about. And if you don't know what misinformation is, it's any sort of information that's misleading or false. And it can be spread intentionally or unintentionally through social media, websites, news, messages. And misinformation can actually have a very negative effect on your mental health. We mentioned increased anxiety and stress, whether it's not knowing if something is false or not, or if something is exaggerated way more than it actually is. That can, again, heighten your fear, make you feel uncertain. And speaking of uncertainty, you could also feel confused. You don't know what you can trust. You don't know what information is real or not. You feel overwhelmed by so many conflicting narratives. You also may find that you have a distrust in institutions or authorities. This sort of misinformation can also lead to conflict. But yeah, in general, confusion, distrust, pessimism, um, not being able to make a well-informed decision as well, and you may feel at the end of the day you don't know if you're able to contribute to a cause that you're very passionate about. You're not sure if you're able to contribute well. So, you believe it or not, misinformation can have a really strong impact on your mental health as well. So, with that being said, I know we started off with such a sad, scary part, but we've learned a little bit about our friends, Frankie and Christina and Andrew. We've learned a little bit about some of their problems, some of the effects these problems have on their mental health. So, let's talk a little bit about some solutions. I'll go ahead and take a second, a minute or two, to take a quick pause so you all can let that information soak into your brain. And I can also get some water. So let's say goodbye to Andrew and get ready to talk about some solutions. And of course, I'll do a quick summary at the end of everything. So let's take it all in. I've been seeing a lot of really awesome conversation. I'm really excited to get into the sort of Q&A where we can talk a little bit, dive more into some of these topics. You guys have been having some awesome conversations. I love seeing everyone sharing their experiences and their thoughts. So hopefully we can see more of that throughout the event. And I appreciate you all being so involved. And again, whether you're just lurking too, thank you so much for listening. And I hope you'll continue to get some important information. So let's talk solutions. I talked previously about how I divided this into input and output. This sort of input-output topic I actually brought up during a Xenoblade stream. Oddly enough, I talk a lot about, I guess, mental health topics, or I guess just not serious, but thoughtful things a lot. Sometimes it's a tangent, most often it's a tangent. But the topic of input and output came to me randomly at the end of a stream. And it's the idea that interacting online, just like it is in real life, is a two-way street. So while you can do work to, you as a person not only should monitor your input and control your input, but you also put things out there as well. Whether you're a creator or you're a fan sharing your thoughts or you're an advocate sharing your thoughts, you also have a certain responsibility as someone on the internet to be mindful of your output as well. And with that being said, at the end of the day, we're all human. So, just lead with empathy, and you don't have to always do every single tool or strategy perfectly every single time, but it doesn't hurt to have a toolkit ready to take from and use. So with that being said, let's dive in. We're getting closer and closer to our Q&A section. I hope you all have been finding this useful so far. So input, let's talk about input and output. For each of the two sections, they're even further divided into two. It's like a fractal. So let's talk about input. The first thing I want to share is let's ask ourselves some questions. I have 3 questions here for you today, presented by our 3 friends. We'll start with Andrew. Andrew asks himself, how do I use social media? And you can kind of ask yourself these questions in your head real quickly as I ask them. We'll do that, okay? I'll ask the questions slowly, and you guys take a few seconds to think about that question for yourself. So first question is, how do I use social media? Okay, give some guiding questions. What are your internet habits? How do you consume social media? Do you find yourself anxious to check your socials first thing in the morning? Is your work or studies suffering because you keep checking for likes or responses on your posts? Think about that. How do you use social media? How do you interact with, again, not just social media, but the internet as well? Something to think about. And asking these questions, the reason why I divided these into questions and then Well, you'll see what the second part is because in order to address problems or situations, it's important to figure out why they exist or how would be the best way to address them. So, one thing you can think about is limiting your time on social media platforms. If you think to yourself, what are my internet habits? And you notice that you're constantly on social media, you can maybe limit the time that you spend on social media platforms. Some platforms, I actually have a, I actually have a limit on my Instagram. Personally, I have a 1 hour limit, and my Instagram tells me when it's been an hour. Sometimes I stay on a little bit longer to like message people, but it's a good way to to make me recognize like, oh, I've been on for too long. So something to think about. Next question comes from our friend Frankie. They ask themselves, what am I feeling? Okay, here's some more questions for you. Think about your reactions to things online. Are you finding yourself constantly wound up by everything you see on social media? Are the issues you involve yourself in relevant to your day-to-day life? Or are they just making you upset? Funny little story. I saw someone like they got this. I can't find the post for you, but someone like got so heated about like it was something about Naruto, something about like I don't like Sasuke or something like that, and they got so wound up that somebody was like, "How dare you not like Sasuke? You're terrible. Like this is why you should like Sasuke." And it's like, how is this an issue that like are you engaging this? Is this like fun? Is this healthy for you? Is this a sort of topic or cause that affects you in your day-to-day life? Or is it something that doesn't impact you in your real life? Or is it just something that makes you upset? Right? Consider what websites and profiles you visit, and if they make you feel bad, unfollow them. You can leave or unfollow a profile or page or website if it's making you feel worse. Occupation says people get overly passionate, and I've talked about this before. These sort of things, I'm sure come from a place of passion, right? Like maybe there's a video game you're really passionate about. Maybe you get angry because someone skips the cutscenes, or someone doesn't play the game right. It comes from that place of passion, but what is the best outlet for these strong feelings, right? Maybe you should find someone who focuses on the story more, like a stream to watch, or find friends who do like Sasuke, and you could talk to them about it. You can control what sort of places you visit and what sort of communities you can be a part of. So find the best avenue or outlet for your passions, right? And remember that, kind of going back to the whole comparing issue that Frankie has. Remember that what people post or what you see may not be honest or a real representation of their experiences or lives. Do your research, trusted resources, and don't believe everything you see, because it may not be the full picture. So, last question from our friend Christina. Why do I use social media? Or the internet? Why do I use the internet? Why am I on there? What drives you to be on it? If being online constantly makes you angry or sad, or if you find yourself on it for negative or harmful reasons, whether that's seeking external validation or causing harm to other people, then you need to reevaluate your relationship for the internet. I've talked about intrinsic and extrinsic motivators. Sorry, difficult word for me. Try to find positive intrinsic motivators for you to use social media, right? Are you posting pictures of your outfit online because you want to share this with your friends, keep them updated, something that you're really excited about, you want to share that with other people, share your craft, share your passion? Or are you posting it for because you rely solely on other people's validation on, whether or not you look good or, you know, things like that? Are you I don't know, are you using social media because you I don't know. You like making people angry or you like, seeing people get strong emotions. Think about why you use social media and try to find positive and productive reasons for you to be online. One other tip that I like to utilize is forging a lifeline, whether that's in your day to day life, your work, your friends, your family, to pull you out of your funk, right? To pull you out of rough waters when you need it. Um, Whenever, if I have a difficult time online, if something bothers me or makes me feel upset, right? I talk to my friends about it. Like, hey, somebody said this or I saw this and it made me feel upset. And I use that lifeline to take a break, which is my next point. And, you know, because I feel like we often feel like when we're in the thick of it, it can feel like everything revolves around that thing that happened, right? You feel so surrounded by that it starts to feel suffocating. And having that lifeline to rely on can pull you out of it, and it can remind you that there's more to life than this thing, I guess. Gosh. So I mentioned that my next point is take breaks. My goodness, too much of anything is bad. So take breaks. What helps me is I like sometimes if I tell myself I'll work for 2 hours and then I'll take a break. Having like a timeline for when you work on things versus when you take a break helps you keep track of that. But yeah, if you feel, we've talked a little bit about Christina and her feeling harassed, and if that happens to you, it's, I don't know, it kind of going back to the whole lifeline thing. It's understandable to feel hurt or down about it. You can rely on your lifeline, and of course, we'll talk a little bit about this in actually right now. So maybe this is a good segue, but it's important to talk about what's happening and I guess report what's happening to help create your space, which is the next part of input. Once you've asked yourself these questions and learned more about your own personal situation and how you feel about the internet and how you interact with digital media, then you can start creating your space. Woo woo! So we're going to talk a little bit about setting boundaries, learning how to block, and report it. And report. All in favor of creating your space on the internet. So I just, want to say that setting boundaries online and, doing a little digital detox, right? That's essential for your mental health, maintaining work-life balance, and fostering, I guess, a mindful relationship with the digital world, with the internet, right? By establishing these healthy boundaries, you can create your own space. And I feel like whenever I say creating your own space, people think of that as like, oh, you're so weak, you can't handle the truth. You can't handle the truth. But setting a boundary is tough. It's difficult. It doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're strong enough to assert your needs, right? Protect your energy, prioritize what really matters to you. I think it's a very proactive step towards creating a healthier and more balanced relationship with online. So you can engage with the internet in a meaningful way. You can engage with things that you're really passionate about. And it's more so for your well-being rather than detaching from it. I think a lot of people tend to be like, oh, you're just creating like an echo chamber. You just want a bunch of like yes people to surround yourself with. But that's totally different from creating a space where you don't get harassed. It's like imagine somebody comes to your house and just starts yelling at you. You're not going to do that. places like streams or like friend communities, things like that, you have every right to create your own space. People aren't entitled. I think as people spend more time sharing more online and spending more time online, we tend to forget that people are not entitled to your time. People aren't entitled to your responses. People aren't entitled to your energy or your personal information, right? Sometimes people will harass not just creators, but like fans as well. Like, we have it, you got to explain why you did this, or like why are you taking a break? You are entitled to give that information out. So with that in mind, we'll talk a little bit about blocking people. I think a lot of people find blocking very intimidating, or even like mean, right? Like, we've talked about this before on stream. It's actually during an advice stream, so if you want to check that one out, we talked about this in depth. But since this is more of a introductory sort of panel, I won't dive too much into it. We only have a certain amount of time. I think people think it's cruel to use blocking, the block function, but keep in mind that this is there not to demean other people, but it's there for your safety, and you're not weak for using it. And we talked a little bit about how people aren't entitled to you or your time or your energy, right? If you find yourself being inundated by hateful people, comments, abusive behavior, difficult memories, even if something, is triggering to you, that block button can, again, help you create boundaries, which are very healthy to have. Boundaries are very healthy. But yeah, I mentioned earlier that people sometimes say, like, oh, you're blocking a bunch of people because, again, you're creating an echo chamber. You're only allowing people with the same opinions as you. But I guess, be aware of how you're using the block button, and trust that you know the difference between helpful and hateful criticism, right? Remember, at the end of the day, that you can still get criticism, but from people in your life who know the real you and have the best intentions at heart, right? Who want the best for you. And thankfully, like, I have, from my personal experience, I can reach out to my friends or my fellow, streamers and things like, hey, like, did I say anything that was bad? Or like, did how I say this come across not the way I intended? So trust that you are creating a boundary for positive purposes, I guess. Yeah, so embrace setting your boundaries online, however you choose to do it. It can be a very positive and empowering choice to set your boundaries. I don't know if anyone out there also needs to hear this, but your mental and emotional health are absolutely worth prioritizing. And setting these boundaries is a powerful tool to preserve your mental and emotional health. Yeah. I love seeing everyone's comments. I'm excited to see, once we start diving into our Q&A section. But again, I wanted to dive into this last one. I didn't get the chance to. Again, tangent. Very common here is reporting, blocked and report. So part of creating your space, right, is you can also tell people that you trust, whether it's a trusted friend, a trusted parent, teacher, school counselor, work counselor. I don't know if they talk to HR about it. Not only about behavior that is harmful or detrimental to you, but as we kind of segue into this next part, content that worries you about them or about your community. So these are both tools that you can use to create your boundaries. In addition to creating your boundaries, for your space, you also need to recognize, sorry, I keep jumping back and forth. There's just more things I keep thinking about. recognizing when you need to disconnect. That's another really important part of creating your space and setting your boundaries. What are your boundaries for how much time you spend online? How much time you're willing to be in front of the screen? How you want to take breaks, right? That's sort of being able to recognize that and create those boundaries is a huge sign, I think, of emotional intelligence. And it's a really important part of your mental health toolbox. You can balance your work life with your life, I guess, manage your stress. And in a world with digital distractions and information information overload, being able to recognize your boundaries in that way is very important. So, with that being said, I'm going to take another pause before we go into the second section of our solutions so we can get some water, take a break. I've been seeing some awesome conversations and thoughts in the chat. So if you have more you want to talk about during the Q&A, please hold on to it. And I'm excited to dive into everyone's thoughts. It's almost like an information overload sometimes. It truly is. Truly is. But as we segue into the next section, for those who are popping in just now, we're viewing the solutions as an input and an output because interacting both in life and online is a two-way street. So let's talk a little bit about output. And again, we're going to start off by asking ourselves some questions, and then we're going to talk more about solutions and action. So we're going to say hi to our friends again. Woohoo, they're here. We'll start off with Frankie the Fan this time. And of course, as I kind of start this section, as we're learning ways to cultivate our own experiences, it's a good place to start to kind of ask yourself these questions before you post content online or you reply to others. And again, we'll start with Frankie the Fan. They said, "How do I feel right now?" Okay, that's our umbrella question. We'll dive into a few more. What is your current emotional state when you're about to post something, when you're creating something to post? Right? Having emotions is totally normal. You shouldn't feel ashamed about feeling things. But you can control how your emotions turn into actions. So before you hit that send button, before you hit that post button, ask yourself, am I in a good state of mind? Does what I've written or created, does that really reflect my stance or my true feelings on something? Or is this just a quick spur of the moment thing that I might regret posting about later? Allow yourself to step out of your emotions for a moment and view your actions from an observational viewpoint. Cool yourself down and put together your posts with a clear head. And if you find that you can't cool down, I think one thing to remember is that, okay, I need to just not if I can't control my emotions, maybe being in front of a device where you can post things to the internet may not be a good idea. So maybe you can distance yourself from that until you are able to cool down. Mm-hmm. Next question comes from Christina, the creator, in the middle here. How will others see this? How might others perceive this? Right? Keep in mind that you may be interacting with people from all across the world. People with different cultures, experiences, beliefs, and understand that you may not be taken the way that you mean. And remember that what you might find funny or helpful might be offensive or hurtful to other people. And now our last question from Andrew. Is this really the best way to get my point across? Okay, here's a scenario. There's something, we've talked about this before, right? You found yourself in a very passionate conversation defending Sasuke from Naruto or something, your favorite character, right? Is being rude, aggressive, and insensitive really the best way to get someone on your side? You think they're gonna like Sasuke more if you're yelling at them and calling them mean things? Try to be sympathetic and think about effective ways to communicate your ideas clearly to other people. right? Before you post something about yourself or someone else, consider if you would make this comment in an in-person setting. And remember that what you post or put out there is going to be very difficult to take back or to remove. Mm-hmm. And with that in mind, let's talk about ways you can foster a positive online community. We talked earlier about creating your space online. But now let's talk about creating our space online. Wow, she's cooking. I know when I thought that up at the cafe, I've been to the cafe so many times to get work done on this. It was like 9 p.m. and I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm cooking." Creating your space, creating our space. So I listed down a couple of things, and I'm gonna kind of popcorn here and there if you don't mind. Um, this I guess this is a very stream of consciousness section for me. But the first point I'll talk about is listening and discussing. We've mentioned already that conversation interaction is a two-way street, so make sure you encourage, an environment of active listening and be empathetic by listening attentively or reading attentively, um, and have a good faith discussion, right? Don't go into a discussion with the idea like, oh, I'm gonna win this discussion. I'm gonna change their mind. Go into it thinking like, okay, there are things that I want to share and the things that they want to share, and maybe I'll learn something new, maybe they'll learn something new, right? You don't go in with this sort of, I guess, bad faith intentions, right? Be open-minded, ask open-ended questions, be willing to share your stories, invite all sorts of perspectives, encourage a respectful debate and constructive criticism. And remember that the focus is understanding and learning from other people. One thing that helps me with, I guess, creating this environment of listening and discussing is setting guidelines. Here on stream, I have my guidelines, and we enforce them. Have some sort of community guideline or code of conduct, because of course we have like our social, sort of, I guess, rules, right, in our society. But if you have a Discord community, or if you have a dedicated space where you talk about things, make sure you outline any sort of expected behavior, right? Treat others with respect, be inclusive, have empathy. And again, remember, enforce these in a positive and respectful way, right? We talked a little bit about diverse perspectives, so I wanted to take a second to shout out diversity, equity, and inclusion as well. Like I said before, you're going to meet people online who are going to have very different perspectives and come from different experiences and different cultures. So celebrate that diversity and promote inclusivity by welcoming people from different backgrounds, identities, and make sure everyone feels respected, and accept people for who they are. And again, be empathetic. If maybe someone doesn't get something right away, or if you have to, I guess, share how your expectations or your perspective. Being genuine, be transparent, be someone that other people can trust with your interactions. Share your thoughts, your feelings, your experiences in a genuine way. Don't, I guess, promote a false or exaggerated version of yourself. And again, be clear about your intentions, maybe your biases, your affiliations, things like that. Be trustworthy, build your credibility. Deliver content that is, it doesn't have to be high quality, but accurate information. Maintain integrity in your behaviors, in the way you talk. Be honest. Be accountable. And of course, learning and growing. listen to feedback that you get from people and learn from your mistakes. And on the flip side, show empathy to others who maybe are learning something for the first time, maybe who come from a different background and may not understand something, right? Um, it's a lot to ponder, right? But at the end of the day, try your best and think to yourself, what kind of mark do I want to leave on the world, right? Because we're not gonna always know what to do, what the best thing is to do at any given time, right? So on one hand, we can try our best to put out our best, right? But you can also be someone who is understanding and empathetic to people who are trying their best, right? Not everyone's gonna be that sort of person, but giving someone the benefit of the doubt goes a long way if that is something you were able to do. So with that being, I know it seems like, oh my gosh, this is so like heavy or so difficult. This is a very difficult topic to talk about. Difficult experiences you have online, and what are all the different things you need to think about in order to help foster this environment online. It's so much so that you might be thinking to yourself, why should I even bother being on the internet? It's so much work, it's so scary. But there is good news. There are good things that the internet can bring about, and I'm sure you all, have experienced them. And as I kind of go into this last slide before the Q&A, I want you all to share something in the chat that you've experienced positively by being a part of an online community, by being online, by taking part in social media. So let's say hello to our friends again. Frankie and Christina and Andrew. Frankie has found community online. There's a study that shows that adolescents, especially, who report that social media helps them feel more accepted, like they have someone who can support them through really tough times. In terms of Christina, she has a place to show off her creative side and find other people who are also, passionate about her hobbies. Andrew feels a lot more connected to what's going on in his friends' lives. While negative effects of social media or being on the internet, everyone experiences those, whether you're a kid, a teen, a young adult, an adult, across the board, everyone experiences those. But studies show that positive effects were even more common across all cohorts, across all age levels. So, self-expression, social connectivity are some positives of being online, interacting with social media. So while there are negatives to it, those shouldn't detract us from being able to be part of all the positivity that you can find online. Someone said, I've had a group of my best friends for almost 8 years. I've met some amazing friends online. I've learned a lot. I've grown a lot. Like I've learned more technical skills. I've learned a lot of creative skills. I've been able to do what I love for a living. I get to share the things I'm passionate about, like mental health, music, video games. I get to share that with you all. And I get to also learn about my passions and be a part of like my game communities and things like that. So with everything that we've talked about, I just want to remind people that there are good things on the internet, and we shouldn't let the negativity keep us away from the positivity. So with that being said, let's dive into a Q&A. We're going to spend about 15-20 minutes. I'll take a second to do some water checks. If you all have any experiences you want to talk about, or if you have any questions, topics that you want to discuss, I'll pick a few. I may or may not be able to fit everything in there. I'll pick some if I feel like I can talk about it. If I have the experiences to, I guess, talk about it. But yeah, even if I don't pick it up, it'd be great for folks to be able to see what sorts of things you're thinking about. So maybe that's a question that they can take away and think about later. And then after the Q&A, I'll do a quick little summary before we raid into Mr. Aegis' stream. Yeah. So, let me water check. I also have coffee check. But I'm trying to be very mindful about my coffee intake. You can learn more about how mental health and the physical body connect in Mie's stream. Oh my gosh. And thank you, Shiny, for the friendly reminder. What are we at currently? Let me check our progress on the Tiltify. We're at 160! Wow! Woot woot! Thank you to everyone who's donated so far. I hope that you've learned something. This is only the first panel so far, so hopefully you've learned something that you can take it. Oh, just kidding! I just refreshed. It's 860! I can't count. I can't read. 860, you guys! Thank you all so much to those who donated. Friendly reminder to refresh things. See, my digital well-being. I need to. It's another thing I have to learn. Oh my gosh! So huge shout out! My goodness! Woohoo! Oh my gosh! Thank you to Thunder Slap. We have some anonymous donators. We have a donation from Nani, from Shinano and Alex. Thank you all so much. Very much appreciated. Aw. Thank you so much. I'm reading. I don't know. Yeah, I'm reading the kind comments that you have on the donations. I think in the campaign dashboard you should be able to see folks' comments. It's nice being able to see people's like stories, and I think that's a huge part of Mental Health Awareness Month, is to remember that we're not alone in our experiences. Okay, time to scroll up and see what folks have, some topics or things that people have shared we want to talk about. Envy says people of different identities just want a little bit of kindness for it. Yeah, for sure. I think sometimes it can feel scary, wondering if someone will be understanding or accepting of your personal experiences or how you identify. So I think being able to create that space for other people is very important. Zen says, I love the internet because it allows me to see other people's reactions to my favorite video games. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Being able to connect with people miles and countries far away is truly an honor. And being able to honor that honor with, appropriate and respectful behavior is very important. It's a privilege we have. Not a lot of people, lots of people out there don't even have internet connection, or, don't know how to find that connection with other communities. And I feel honored and privileged to be able to connect with you all, and be able to do that for a living. to honor that honor honorably. Where's Zuko? Oh my gosh. Let me see. What are some takeaways that you all have gotten from today? What is something that really resonated with you from today? What is something you are going to walk away with and want to learn more of in a future stream? The internet really does bring us closer together. The internet was a huge part of my journey in improving my mental health. I talked a little bit earlier about how in my toughest times with my mental health, it was the support of my friends and family and my community that kept me going, and they encouraged me to learn more about my mental health and my experiences and how I can take care of myself. And the internet was a huge part of that. Finding helpful resources online and academic literature to, help me understand my feelings a lot better and how to address that. And it connected me with a lot of really amazing professionals and really awesome institutions who continue this work. Being mindful of my own emotional state when creating/posting is something I hadn't considered enough. Yeah, for sure. I I think it's a really amazing skill. It's hard. It's not something you really think about at first, right? Because I think we think of the internet as, or like your social media as, this is where I can, right, be genuine and be honest about myself, right? You can share things with the internet that it can be a really great way of like reminding people that other people also experience the same kind of emotions and things like that. But again, the internet or the people out there are entitled to how you're feeling all the time, and how they don't need to always know what you're doing. Um, I think people are like, well, I want to know, how do you feel about this? How do you? And I think we forget that, right? So I don't know. Yeah, I'm trying to think about if I had any troubles with that first beat. I think I just I'm really bad at posting on social media in general. Like, I had lunch today, so it wasn't something I personally experienced um having difficulty with, but I know, folks, and again, this isn't to bash anyone, anything we've talked about today. I hope I didn't come across as like, well, some people can do that. I don't want any of these conversations, they come from a place of respect and open-mindedness, and some people are going to struggle a little bit more with certain things, and some people are going to have an easier time at certain things. And I think for me, there's definitely other things that I've had issues with, but I definitely have some friends who find it difficult knowing when to control posting their emotions online. It's a very easy way to vent, right? Like how you would go to a friend and vent, but maybe it's a more productive way to keep that in a private space. So yeah, no, I think a lot of people can really resonate with that. Well-being can also be negatively affected by comparing yourself to others online. This is something that I used to struggle with a lot, for sure. And every once in a while, I think I do too. I think sometimes whenever I hit like a plateau, or if I feel like I'm stuck like in a, like maybe if I have like creative block, or I'm not doing, or I don't feel super motivated, I think sometimes I tend to compare myself to other people's, and people are going to be in different places of their life and their career at different times, and it's just unfair to yourself to be comparing yourself to other people in that way. Mm-mm-mm. Yeah, honestly, yeah, like I think a lot of people can feel, can relate to that feeling of comparison in various parts of their life at any given time. Oh, this is a great point. Master Nest says, I think people vent out sometimes publicly because they feel that they can't share it personally with anyone. Possibly. That's a very good point. That is a very good point. And while I feel like it's very important to find a trusted circle to rely on, and I think communities can definitely be that, for sure. You have to consider that maybe your post may go out of its intended reach, and people who don't have your best intentions in mind may find it and may abuse your vulnerability. I think it's awesome when people, have the strength and the vulnerability to be able to share their experiences online, so other people who experience the same thing can relate or feel like they're not alone. I think that's a very powerful thing. But maybe when you're not in the best headspace, and you won't be able to deal with maybe people who are interacting with things in bad faith, or maybe who don't have your best intentions at heart. You may not have the emotional bandwidth at that time to deal with that. So I think for those who feel like they can't share it with anyone, I think being able to find a trusted community or circle, or a person, or even like a professional that you can feel like you can share something with someone, and have their intentions be positive towards you. But I can definitely see where you're coming from. It may feel like that's your only outlet. Another way, if you feel like there's no way you can have those feelings come outward, a lot of people use art as an outlet. If you have certain feelings you want to express, but maybe you feel like you don't have a community or a circle to share with it, maybe directly, like your feelings in words. Maybe you can express those feelings through art, visual, through singing. You can write something. Um, maybe not specific things if you're not willing to share, but you could talk about your general feelings and things like that. Or honestly, you don't even have to post it anywhere. You can create it for yourself, and that's a great way that people can have an outlet. Journaling is good. Yeah, journaling is fantastic. Mm-hmm. Do I have any advice on how to find said circle? Yeah, so I think specifically with the internet, I think I found a lot of the people, at least online, who I consider my online circle, because of course I have my in-person circle, but since this is a digital wellness, right, panel, I think being able to find a community with a shared, starting off with a shared, hobby or interest, but I think the biggest thing here is keep in mind that you got to develop a relationship first. You can't just randomly pop into a space and be like, hey, I need to vent to you my problems, because it's difficult for both people, right? You know, the other person may not have the emotional bandwidth for it, and you don't know if you are able to trust that person yet. Obviously, you don't want to start making friends with the intention of turning them into your therapist, but start by making friends, finding people that you can trust, or finding people who will appreciate you for who you are. And you'll find, as you develop this friendship naturally, when you do find yourself in a difficult situation, reaching out to them like, hey, I've been kind of having a bad day. Is it okay if I ask, kind of sort my feelings out with you, something like that? Yeah, because I think, making friends with someone with the sole purpose of, having them listen to your, problems can be draining for the other person. So I think, yeah, respecting the boundaries of the community you join is important. Mm-hmm. But being able to find a circle that you can trust, I think starting from shared interests and things like that are very important. Yeah, not avoiding trauma dumping to strangers is definitely a good piece of advice for sure. Oh my gosh. Oh, and kind of going back to one of your earlier comments, Z, one good practice online is to read out loud what you're preparing to post and think, is this something I want to put out for everyone to see? Or is my mind wanting to look at it in third person? That's a really interesting, strategy for sure. Like in real life, find a cool place, find a place to cool down, feel it out, and watch out for scam artists and bad actors for sure. For sure. Mm-hmm. Any other takeaways? What is something that you felt? We'll go on for another 5 minutes, and then we could have a quick little break before the next panel. Because I know I just threw a bunch of big information at you all, so breaks are very important. We had a quick 10-minute one, but hopefully we'll have time for breaks in between the panels, and as well there is a bigger break between all of the panels and the concert as well. Yeah, I'd love to learn more about your takeaways, things that you feel you're gonna work on, or things maybe you'll share with other people, things that you want to learn more about and you'll dive into later. I do have some resources I'd like to share as well. And of course, if you jumped in halfway through, you could always join the VOD gang, or you can. I'm about to summarize everything once we finish up our Q&A, or any topics that if there's any topics that that were brought up in your head while you were listening, any of your own tips or tricks. Recently, I've been trying to take a couple of minutes after even mundane stuff, like scrolling, to reflect on how I feel about what I did. Yeah! Oh, for sure. Yeah, something I've been struggling with a little lately, which is also kind of why I did this, is scrolling before bed. I used to have a really good bedtime routine, but I think with how busy I've kind of been relying on revenge bedtime procrastination a little bit, which is something I used to struggle with, for sure. But again, growth is not linear, so we're going to dive in and out of good habits and bad habits, but what matters is that I'll work on them, and I know how to work on them. But yeah, I think, being able to think, how much time did I just spend on scrolling? You know, would I have felt better if maybe I did a more mindful sort of thing to pass the time? Maybe I scrolled because I didn't want to work or I was tired to work. Is there a better way for me to, spend the time relaxing? Like playing a video game for myself, right? Maybe read a book that I've been meaning to read. Like, is that the best way for me to spend my time? Mm-mm. Oh, for sure, Scarlett. We mentioned this earlier. Having a healthy outlet outside of online, for sure. Having your lifeline, right? And not just people being your lifeline, but also hobbies, things that matter to you outside of online. Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. Don't beat yourself up over failing any of the tips. There's always next time. Growth isn't linear. You're not gonna. Sometimes you're gonna plateau. Sometimes you're gonna have a really awesome growth spurt. Sometimes you're not gonna do a lot of fixing right away. That's okay. Like if you make yourself feel bad for not having a certain amount of progress, it's just gonna make things worse. Mm-mm-mm. Mm. I find that if I discipline myself to meditate before when I expect myself to sleep slash try to sleep, scrolling goes away. Ah, yeah. I think also considering what you could do before you engage in something, even if you don't choose the productive option, promotes more mindful time usage. For sure. For sure. One last thing I want to ask before we wrap up this Q&A session. Are there any perspectives that maybe aren't as, or experiences even, that aren't as common? Because, of course, I talk about my experiences and my strategies and solutions from my own perspectives, right? As someone who is able bodied, as someone who is a woman, as someone who is Asian American, there's a lot of like my personal identities and experiences that feed into the things that I share and my experiences and how I deal with things, um, and things that I might not, experience. Um, I think one topic that I could definitely think about is I know for some people it's, maybe if you have a chronic illness or if you have a disability, being able to have a lifeline outside of when I say outside of, maybe that means figuratively, like outside of the internet, like crafts or things like that, or literally outside. A lot of people rely on, interacting online, to talk to people and interact with people because it's not as easy for them to do so in real life. So things like that. If there's any perspectives that you want to encourage other people to consider, as an extrovert, it's really easy for me to talk to people and have conversations and share my feelings. Maybe being introverted, this is a more difficult, strategy for you. So I wanna kind of create that space in this last bit of our Q&A for people to consider. And if you have any tips or tricks as someone who has that unique experience or perspective, I'd love if you could share. What about looking at it from the older and younger perspectives? The older generation has a hard time understanding new technology, while the younger generation is learning it as they grow up. For sure. That is a great point, Demon Warrior. I think, depending on how, regularly you use the internet, there might be some like internet culture, behaviors and things that, might not come across as strongly, like, whether you're part of a younger generation or an older generation, something that you say may come across as rude to someone in an older generation or likewise, like vice versa, right? So that's definitely something to consider, for sure. Mental health is a multifaceted approach. Absolutely. There's definitely a lot of angles to mental health. You said mindfulness, I'm sure physical health, spiritual, diet for sure. We mentioned physical health as well. And if you want to learn more about how mental health and physical health, combine, definitely tune in for Mie's stream later. Mm-mm-mm. Meeting people as an introvert can definitely be hard, not wanting to overexert yourself. can lead to a lot of FOMO for sure. Just having these strategies is helping me already because it helps me to remind me to keep these things in mind. Yeah, thank you all very much. I'm sad to close our Q&A, but I do want to make sure we have a few minutes for you all to take a break between this panel and the next one, because the next panel starts in 9 minutes. So I'm going to do a quick little summary of everything we've learned about today as we wrap up. So in summary, we talked about problems, their effects, and some solutions, both input and output. Some of the problems we talked about when it comes to having an unbalanced relationship with the internet and digital media is social ineptitude, comparisons, comparing yourself with other people, internet addiction, feeling isolated, being harassed online, burnout, whether you're a creator or a fan, or an advocate. Doom scrolling is something that is, I'm sure a lot of us can relate to, and interacting with misinformation are some of the problems. And we learned a lot about their effects on our mental health. And then we talked about our solutions, both input and output, because interacting online is a two-way street. When it comes to input, asking ourselves, how do I use social media? What am I feeling? Why do I use social media? And using those questions to create your space, right? Setting boundaries and using tools to create that space, blocking and reporting. And of course, creating our space. Ask yourself, how do I feel right now when I post this? How will others see this? Is this the best way to get my point across? And again, creating our space. So listening and discussing, celebrating diversity, equity, and inclusion, being genuine, transparent, honest, and of course, learning and growing with empathy. So thank you all so much for being a part of my panel today. I hope you learned a lot. I hope you have something that you can take away, and I hope it acted as a good diving board for you to start having these conversations with yourself, your community, and with your loved ones. So I actually have a survey if you want to fill it out. It's in the description. If you want to talk about if this panel was helpful, some things that maybe you'd change or you want to see more of in the future. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it if you would like to share those. And be sure to stay tuned for the raid into the next panel, which is Mental Health First Aid with Mr. Aegis. Thank you all so much. Again, this is the first of 3 streams. So if you want to learn more, be sure to stay tuned for the other panels. And we do have an evening charity concert as well. And friendly reminder that this is a charity event. We are benefiting the National Alliance on Mental Illness. You'll learn more about the charity throughout the event, beginnings of panels. You can check out the opening ceremonies. And yeah, thank you all again so much for being a part. And please enjoy the rest of the event. Stick around for the raid, like Shiny said, or you can follow the link in the description below. Bye!